Hey, buddy, not feeling well?
Oh my gosh, I am so tired.
Hey, what's the matter, champ?
I got the alert fatigue, bro.
You know what? I'm actually just going to start the show right from there. I'm recording now. Everybody, welcome to the newest Splunk podcast, Second Order Security. My name is Dan Yakoski, who really has no idea what he's doing. It's like I've never done one of these before. This one is pre-recorded. Normally, when we record these things, we go up to Twitch or YouTube or stuff like that, and it records automatically, so I worry about it then. And I swear to God, we've just talked for 5 minutes straight of everything about the podcast and our guest. I already insulted Jack like 3 times, and then Doug was getting ready to do his intro, and all of a sudden I'm like, "Hey Doug, could we do that again?" Because I saw the little record button was not red. Anyway,
to be fair though, it's not hard to say, "Hey Doug, can you talk about yourself again?"
Right. Oh, no.
That's an easy thing. We can just keep doing that for another 45 minutes.
I'm not worried about that at all. Like, I'd say, "Hey Doug, talk," and then I can just go get a sandwich. So anyway, welcome to the show. My name is Dan Yakoski, soon to be fired from the research and advocacy team here at Splunk. That is a fancy way of saying evangelist. Since this is the first one, I'll do a slight intro on me, and then I'll talk to both of my guests, and we'll get to our topic. I come from the blue side. I come from the threat hunty type side of things, places like Mandiant, GE Capital, Bank of America, Squirrel, AWS, things like that. And I take all that stuff now that I've been doing security for about 10 years, IT for another 10 before that. Now I talk about it, and I talk about it. The aim of this is to talk to my fellow practitioners, like the boots on the ground, as I call are my fellow unwashed masses and fish bowls everywhere in the SOC. And we talk about practitioner type things, and we don't just do it within Splunk, where we do it with guests like we have today with Jack Ham, who's CISO at Gigamon. And also we do have some internal representation, Doug Brush, but I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So yeah, let's get right to that. I swear it is recording now because the timer's going and everything. So Doug, and now I'm going to have to try to fit in my insults later about how Jack shaved his beard off, but I'll figure that out later. Doug, introduce yourself to the people.
Yeah. So I'm second time's a charm, right? So I'm a global security advisor.
You better make it better this time.
I know. I might think I reorder a couple things. But yeah, so the long and the short of it is I get to do cool security stuff. And really the reality is I've been on the practitioner side for decades. I've been in the leadership side for decades. So I can be a man of many hats. And really my goal is to take things that really work, that are beyond just academic and, hey, you should be doing this, to, hey, this works and this doesn't. And really try to align with security leadership with their strategic goals and say, okay, here's how you operationalize it and make this tactical. So making sure you can look at the horizon and down at the keyboard at the same time.
Ooh, that's fit. You practice that.
On the fly.
You practice that. That's like in some bio somewhere, isn't it?
Oh, it's going to be now.
Well, thank you, Doug. Doug is actually one of my buddies from before I got here. He's one of the... So what people might not know or realize about Splunk is that we have some of the most top-tier security talent that I've ever seen. Like, I got here, and I knew a couple of my friends worked here, and all of a sudden I kept getting messages like, "When'd you get here?" Like, "I didn't know you were like when did you leave Gigamon?" And I was like, "Oh, back in November." So, and then on top of that, these people who I know who are like top shelf security people don't know that the other ones are here either. So I'm trying to bring all of these people together. That's my aim here. But I also thought it would be a good agreeable symmetry, since I did come from Gigamon, to have my ex-CISO, because now he can't yell at me for downloading Kali again. That was like one of my first intros. Actually, no, my first intro to Mr. Jack Ham as a CISO was taking one of his tweets and taking it for my own, or one of his comments or something, tweeting it as my own, and then it got like 100 retweets, and I had to message like, "Dear Jack, you don't know me, but I'm on the team that you would expect this from. I stole one of your things, and hi." So Jack, please introduce yourself, and I'm sorry.
I didn't yell at you about Kali. I just asked you to provide a business justification for having it. That's different.
And then I just simply passed him a note saying, "I do what I want."
I do what I want, yes. And then we realized you were going to be a hard one to keep in control. So Yeah, my name's Jack Ham. CISO versus CISO. I mean, I feel like we're gonna have that debate. I still refer to myself as a CISO, and so I don't know what that is. No, but so I do that. I actually have two jobs. I do that, and then also because I open my mouth oftentimes and complain about things, I also became the vice president of infrastructure for Gigamon. So I get both things now. I get to set the security standards and then also make the team go secure it. So it's fun time. Yeah, I've just been sort of rolling around doing high secure environments for a long time. I was in Power Grid prior to this. I did a stint in content delivery. Had some startups. Way back in yore, I was going to be a physicist until I realized there was no money in that. So then I went into tech instead, and yeah, I've been nerding out since then.
You actually look like you'd be a physicist. Like if someone were to say, if I put you in a group of people and said pick out the nerd physicist, it would have been you.
Oh, that's interesting. When I have my beard, people say I look like I should be homeless. But,
yeah, no. I was just about to say, this is post beard. When I asked Jack disclaimer, you can't blame me for this. When I asked Jack to be on my first episode ever in Splunk, never make a first impression again. He only get one. He had his beard. His avatar has his beard. He shows up on Zoom. I said, we're doomed. This is thank God this is pre-recorded because we're absolutely doomed.
Put something over me. Just blur me out.
Well, actually,
like Zoom filters. You could probably do that.
Actually, here's what I'm going to do from the magic of post-production. I am going to put a beard on Jack right now, and then I'm going to take it away.
Like that.
Now, that's if I can figure that out. That might be a part of the show. We're like, why didn't any beard appear? And then a little disclaimer will roll across the bottom. Danny couldn't figure that nonsense out. But he tried. ... So anyway, yeah, both of you, welcome to the show. I'm actually super excited about this. Because while the aim of this show going forward, hopefully weekly, will be to speak to practitioners and speak in such a way where it's not like a bunch of, buzzwords that are worthy of a search engine optimization or optimization engine, whatever the heck they call that thing. It'll be to talk to people who were like us, who were like me, who were hands on keyboard, who had a mission, who did it and who did the security thing, but then they never really had access to their upline, right? Like they might have had their direct manager, they might have had some messaging that came down, but they never really had interactions with their CISO, Jack. You can fight about that towards the end. You know what we can do? We could talk about the meat of the conversation, and then the whole CISO versus CISO thing could be like a B-roll. And I think that's one of the crucial things. Like, matter of fact, the other thing that bore this conversation out in my head was I had posted to Twitter once, because that's all I ever do. I asked how many people had regular skip levels, and if people who are watching might not know what a skip level is, it's where you get to schedule a one-on-one meeting with the boss above your boss, right? That you wouldn't normally do it because
Can I just point out, I've never heard that term
skip level
until 20 minutes ago. Yeah, well, I guess because I'm also, you got to understand, like, I'm with the hacker mentalities. I don't ask for permission. I just go do things. So I didn't know that was a thing you were supposed to do, be like being polite in corporate culture. For like 20 years, I did not hear that term until my new manager 10 minutes ago said, hey, if you want to do a skip level meeting, that's okay. I'm like, what the hell is that? And
yeah.
Like, well, go tell us, like, well, our boss hired me anyway. Like, whatever, I'll go talk to whoever I want.
Yeah.
I won't.
Yeah. So that's something that was real. And I was amazed. Actually, I didn't so much ask as I did my whole blanket statement, drop all the bombs thing. If you don't do this, you suck. So it wasn't like, who has a skip level? Jack, do you do skip levels at your level? Like who is your level above your level?
The level above my level is the CEO. Yeah, we talk. I think it's very normal to do them. I'm surprised Doug's never heard of the term before. I feel like that's just been like rolling around on
seriously
and Twitter for, I don't know, it's been rolling
it's
around
Doug,
since
though.
Smoke signals. But yeah, I mean, I think for me it's super useful. gives you a chance to get a better sense of like how things roll. Actually, it's interesting if for leaders that don't do them, like I always worry about that because there's sort of, it's already hard to get people to do the right thing and sort of, and to, I guess, to Doug, to your sort of your point, like you're just going to go off and do whatever you want anyway. Like sometimes if you're in my position, you're not going down a little bit, like you can miss good like opportunities to take advantage of it. Like, but I'm with you actually. I think that in general, you should feel able to go do that. Now, of course, I'm going to go right into the like manager leader hat on. Here's the challenge. Don't go say something to my boss that you haven't said to me first.
Right. Yeah. There's a difference.
And it's actually it's an interesting challenge because like, I'd be the last person that wants anyone to be filtering out. But the problem is of course, is that hierarchies exist in organizations, and it can be you can inadvertently drop a hand grenade someplace where you don't know you're doing it. And so I think it's also, as if you're down below and you're going to skip level with your boss's boss, make sure that, sort of like think through what you're going to say first. Shooting from the hip can be good, but it can go very badly too. So.
Right. And that's actually one of the things I love about having come here at Splunk. And it was the same thing at Gigamon too. I always felt allowed and enabled to not just skip one level, but I could have went, a couple levels up if I needed to. But yeah, it's one thing to have a check-in and be like, hey, how's everything? And how's everything up top? And how's things down below? And then another thing to like complain about things that you haven't even brought up through the regular chain yet. So I actually was thinking of this episode as a multi-level skip, being able to talk direct, because for me, I would go from my manager, Josh, and then up to his boss, Andy. So my skip level would be Andy. But I would never like skip from Andy like 2 other levels above him to talk to our CISO. Which I mean, I actually feel, and in the short time I've been here, empowered to do that. But not a lot of people do. And judging by the people who have never heard of skip level before, looking at you, Doug, is that let's do it this way. So about I don't know, like 3 or 4 months ago, something like that, right before I came here, I was a part of a webinar that was speaking to other CISOs. They had a couple practitioners on, and they had gotten a bunch of CISOs on, and it was something relatively new that they were doing as kind of this outreach thing. And I remember being on, and they had kind of fired like a bunch of stuff at these CISOs all at once. They were talking about, where are the holes in your organization? And then it was like AI, and then it was machine learning, and then it was this, and it was crypto. And then I was like, oh my God. I was like, I don't know everything in the world, and I can't blanket statement all CISOs for all environments everywhere. But I'm betting they're just wondering how to squeeze a little more money out of their department, or they're wondering like, how can we get people to stop clicking on stuff? So, I know when I was on internal teams and things like that, all of our people had stuff they wish they would be able to tell their CISO, like we need more money, more headcount, things like that. Or if you're a consultant or a security strategist, you can, it's your job to tell the CISO as a third party, like, hey, your baby's really ugly, but don't worry, it'll grow into itself. Don't worry, the ears will get smaller. So what's that?
Ears, they didn't get smaller with you though.
No, they actually, my head and my poor son, yeah, these things, right? These are actually glued to my head now because I do so much of this stuff. My poor son has my head, and it is not so much a regular head. Like Jack, you have a regular head, except for the baldness. And Doug has a semi-regular head with a shark fin on it. But mine goes like up and then out without the brain to cover the space. And my poor son has the same thing, but it's also built like a boulder, so he can just bounce off of things. Anyway, I digress. This will actually be information rather than just me dunking on my guests. So really like everybody wants the ear of the CISO, whether it be their internal team or vendors or whatever. And my motivation was just like, hey, maybe the messaging isn't so much about the messaging coming down, It's about the messaging we want to send up, and maybe it's getting filtered. Maybe it's not getting to them at all. So I thought I would start with Doug. Doug and I have talked before. Doug does a lot of work with a lot of organizations that we have work with. So Doug, when it comes to CISOs, what is the thing that surprises you the most when you speak to CISOs of things like that? Maybe they're not aware of, or maybe if they're concentrating on the wrong things. Like, is there anything that you steadily get surprised by being able to speak to different leaderships?
I would say I become, and just trying not to become cynical or jaded over time, but less surprised is how little that they know about their own IT operations and vice versa, right? You know, if you look at what a CISO is trying to do is strategically align business risks with operational IT stuff. And that this is IT is only being one part of it. You know, their program being people and process and technology. You know, I'm constantly surprised at how little they know. And so a lot of things that I've had to do is really be the good cop, bad cop, where I'll say to the CISOs, like, what do you need to know about your organization? And this comes, you know, from my background is really, you know, this is the first time I've been in a pure product company. I've productized tons of services, but yeah, I'm really a consultant at heart and really a social engineering. Like, I'm probably by far less hands-on keyboard hacker than I am a social engineer. Like, if I can get to my goals of getting in and sitting in front of a computer, I win. And I can talk my way into a lot of things. It usually pisses off my pen testers. Like, that's not fair. I'm like, why? I achieved my goals. Like, I got to where I wanted to go as fast as I possibly could with little friction. And quite frankly, people opened the door for me. So a lot of that is I try to get that mentality of the CISO. So what can I do to enable you? Like, what don't you know? What can I go talk to somebody else about and get insight into, or bridge a gap, or find out? Because a lot of times I found that there's a lot of silos and departments in just about any organization, and everybody has their own goals, objectives that are often have complementary things, competing things, and then things that are just isolated to that department. And so what I try to do is go around and on behalf of CISOs or anybody in the C-suite is basically ask a series of questions that I can find, hey, what's the complementary goal across departments? And let's, you know, kind of all row in the same direction, because often it's whack-a-mole. You know, it's like one department's doing this and then that conflicts with that. And then the CISO gets, hey, you have to do this now for legal and compliance. CCPA just came out. It's like, God damn it, we were already doing something different for HIPAA. And it's like, all right, well, where are the win-wins, right? And stop looking at everything in a zero-sum game. But I'm surprised still is how many organizations still put CISOs in that reactive mode of, you know, field this. Yes, we want you to come and do a strategic program. But then it really quickly becomes this reactive state where they have to constantly respond to things.
It's interesting that you would drop on the point there about the lack of awareness of the IT side.
Yeah.
I think that one of the challenges with the role in general is that there's everyone sort of, if what's a CISO do? And everyone has this image in their head. And the thing is that, like, I come from a technical background. Like, I come out of large scale system operations. I'm a technical CISO. A lot of CISOs aren't. A lot of them are compliance, they're regulatory. Their exposure has largely been to, don't mean this in a pejorative way, but like corporate IT stuff as opposed to like running global systems. And so I think there's a bit of a myth that there should be a set of skills, because if you think about a chief marketing officer, right? Like, what they need to do and what they're responsible for is really well understood. But what does the CISO do? Is the CISO the firefighter? Is the CISO the compliance person? Is it a legal advisor? Is it also the chief privacy officer? Like, so I think part of and this is where a lot of the churn in the industry, I think, comes out of, is that there's not a really obvious, like, what is my job? And then on top of that, if you can just consider sort of the realities of, like, trying to manage risk, then you wind up in a situation where defaulting to the reactive is both sort of obviously what's going to happen, but also I think a lot of people take safety in it, because it can feel good to be the hero all the time, even when maybe sometimes the right decision is to actually, not do something and stay steady on strategic goals instead. Even amongst CISOs, when I talk to them, like, not everybody is even, some of quite a few security leaders have trouble even getting out of their own way, and like to your point, translating effectively technical problems into business. This is going to obviously come up, so I'll say it now and we can come back to it. But like, Jack, this thing is so bad. This thing is so bad. So what? Like, why do I care? Like, why do I care? And how am I going to convince somebody above me that they should care? And so, and that's a common thing that comes from individual contributors, right? Like they see something, and the challenges, and this goes back to the sort of the point of skip levels, is like, we're trying as all in aggregate. If I was going to say there's something we're trying to do as all of us as security practitioners, is we're like trying to gather intent and then use it to predict risk. And so the thing is, for anything you give me that's a piece of information, if it's just some hanging piece of information and I can't incorporate it into that model, I can't do anything with it.
Yeah, that's such a good point, right? Like I had this reminds me exactly of the story with a VP of IT and security, kind of wore dual hats, that I was in a big data leak thing for him, and we had to do forensic imaging of sites. We were there for 3 weeks, and finally I'm like, just a basic DLP solution. Like there was some data that got stolen from another company, brought in by the sales team, spread like wildfire throughout the organization. There was a court injunction. I'm like, why didn't you have like some of these basic controls based on the industry they're in? When farmer, he's like, oh, well, I tried it, but I brought it up to management and they didn't listen to me. They wanted everybody in sales to have iPads instead. So it's on them. I'm like, no, it was on you. You didn't talk in their terms. You talked in technical terms.
That's right.
Jack, what is, and so you actually hit on something really important that as I progress in my career, I have started paying attention, and I advise every practitioner to do this if they care and if it's in their within their RAM and in their brain, to start caring a little bit more about the business side, right? Especially in security. I mean, a lot of us are hackers and we come from a hacking culture. Now they've built an industry around it. And so we get very intent on the thing and figuring out how the thing works, and let's do this thing, and let's build a better mousetrap, and let's do all these technical things. You said convince you why you should care. If you were going to sit down with, a SOC analyst, right? Say a SOC analyst had something that he really thought leadership should know, right? He like that this thing is something we should look at, or something, worse yet, something you have to spend money to go look at, right? Because like things take resources. How for you, Jack Ham CISO, not knowing, that this is not going to be a blanket workflow for everybody. How does that SOC analyst get you in the executive to care about that thing?
So I'm going to do something that's called, it's really useful in security, called answer the question you wish you'd been asked. And so I'm going to actually answer that one first and then answer yours. And the first thing that I think I have to say to everybody that does this is that security is unique because the people really are personally invested and care. This is often a very mission-oriented group of people. There's lots of former military. There's lots of people that really, really fundamentally care about what they're doing. And there's the bit of a psychological disconnect there that is really important for everyone to recognize, which is that business decisions are business decisions. They are based on risk management only and profit and loss and other considerations like that. So the one thing I would say to always remember when you're going to go and start, now I'm going to answer the second half of the question, is to not let that desire to do the right thing be the primary driver. Because the end of the day, like if I need to go convince somebody to spend $1 million to fix a problem, I need to explain it to them in the way of, if we spend 10 cents, we protect $1. If we spend 50 cents, we protect $1. If we spend $1.50, we protect $1. And the problem, of course, is that at the end of the day, there's a point where the diminishing return of security occurs, and then we make other types of business decisions. And this is true for all types of business decisions. I think one of the differences in why I say the first part is because in security it can really feel like, frankly you've been told to F off, and like, like, oh, your problem isn't a concern, and it's not that. You may have a very legitimate issue you're explaining that may just not make sense from a business practice. I always joke that if you want me to build the most secure network I can, we'll just unplug everything and power it down. But the problem with that, of course, is then we don't make any revenue. And so the sort of like the why do I care needs to be translated into, and I'm not expecting an analyst to be able to be, fully aware of all the business considerations, but help me understand why that relative to, or just think about, for the analysts out there listening, like just think about it. You're looking at the, you're looking at your Splunk, and there's red lights blinking all over the place. Like the same type of prioritization you take in assessing risk of alerts is like, you got to explain that to me, because of course I've got a lot more people than just the SOC coming up to me, right? Like I've got people want certifications done because it helps sales. They want all sorts of things, and they're coming from all directions, and there's only so much that we can do with resources. And so I think that would be the first thing about it. The other thing too is that just like good, I'll say CISO this time just to make you happy. Just like good CISO.
Thank you very much.
Don't leverage excessive FUD. Everyone knows what FUD is, hopefully. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. The same goes true when you're talking to me. Like, don't try to scare me into the reaction, because if it turns out like you do that too many times, I will get alarm fatigue of you.
It's literally, it's crying wolf, right?
You can't scare Jack Ham.
Yeah, I mean, so
I'm going to make that into a sticker.
I'm very I feel like at some point you just sort of see enough of it where you're just like, okay, yeah, sure, that's that again, like that that turd has come around the bowl, but this is the third time I've seen it this year. So
I literally, Jack, have it's on my whiteboard of talks that I'm working on is, the world's not going to die, you are. It's just like, I'm tired of like.
That's a great one. Nobody steal that. That belongs to Doug. That's a good one. Actually, no, I'm going to steal it.
It came from talking to somebody at the World Economic Forum last week, and like kind of the guy that does all the economic modeling and then risk, and says, look, he's like, it's like climate change and cybersecurity are the two big things. And I was like, oh, we can't mess this up. That's the problem. So, we all know there's been climate change problems that gotten too far, but we sold it on FUD. The world's going to die, or you're going to die. The oceans, everybody was going to die. Nobody died. So we're going to fall. Are we going to fall in that same trap again with cyber? Like, cyber is a legit risk right now that we need to address globally for global economic things. And if we fall into this whole, the sky is falling BS again, we're never going to solve anything.
I worry though that we've fallen into that trap.
Yeah.
Now, and it's been no, you're right though, because the end of the day, like, there has to be some, it looks bad, but there has to be you have to be able to put some quantifiables around it to really put it in context. It's one of the things that I really like about that, and I think that's going to be a great topic, Doug, by the way. I think that's, you absolutely have to do that. I want to listen in intently on it. Is just it's like it's like COVID-19 is a great example. It's like the problem, and actually I've got my note written down here, two notes written down here for ones. One of them is, what do you do when the low probability risk becomes high probability? Because the pandemic's a great example of that. And it's like, everybody had a pandemic on their BCP and everybody said it was low probability. Maybe people in the healthcare, and maybe people that were in the industries that might be better aware pandemics didn't think it was low probability, but for the rest of us we did. And it goes into the same thing, is that if we're going to prioritize all this stuff, like, how do you prioritize planning for a pandemic? Like, normally that would be on your risk register, and you wouldn't even like, you'd occasionally once a year you'd go and be like, still no pandemic, we're doing good. I live in California, and so it's the old it's a lot of the should you see it as like group think out here around earthquakes, right? Like, everybody there's sort of two camps of people. There's people that know, they're like me, they know they should seismically retrofit their house and they haven't. And then there's people that don't know they should seismically retrofit their house and they haven't. But the reality is an earthquake's coming. And it's not, and I feel like this is sort of has a lot of the same sort of psychological input that goes into cybersecurity, is that there's people that go, that risk is one we can push down the path for a while because it's low probability. And then there's people that, to your point, Doug, earlier, where people not being aware of their IT environment, that don't know that they face the risk. And so, this goes back to sort of this notion that, like, part of this is to sort of take everything out on the table and really say that, what are you really willing to risk? One of, in my mind, the biggest mistakes we've had in BCP is out of this is where we try to, like, you look at like really robust BCP plans, and it's like people are trying to put numerics around, the asteroid hitting the planet. And it's like, maybe rather than that, like, just think about what happens if you can't do work for, 30 days.
But what if Jira's down?
Exactly. What if Jira goes down? And the thing is, if you sort of take it away from like the panic and fear, like, it's really fun to write a BCP and be like, an asteroid might hit the planet, but it's like, is it really useful? Like, at the end of the day, because like everyone else, like, we all went and dusted out the BCP when the pandemic came along, and we're like, oh damn, pandemics actually do happen.
So
true story. That's why I moved to Colorado from New York, because I started doing the pandemic planning for so many BCPs, DRs. I was like, ooh, New York City, that's a bad spot. I'm getting the hell out of here.
So,
but to that point too, that's how I've also been able to enable change. Is I said, well, look, this is particularly the last couple of years, particularly as weather changes. Again, we're talking about global climate change. We're affecting areas like New Jersey and Long Island that we're having extended outages of due to weather related incidents, so snowstorms, things like that. People couldn't get the offices were shut down. I said, all right, your Exchange server, that's 2003 Exchange, that's wide open, you got to take that down. Well, instead of putting in another server, what if you put in something that was more resilient that fit the cost model, and it was moving them to Office 365, and then there was continuity, and then we built in security, and then we built in efficiencies and moved things from OpEx, CapEx to OpEx, and it built a nice story of, hey, we're going to kill many birds with one stone if we do this.
Jack, we had mentioned a couple of times, and especially our favorite word, FUD, acronym, whatever you want to call it, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Not to set you up to have a bunch of inbound calls if somebody actually sees this. What is? You must get every vendor under the sun that wants your time, that want your ear, that want your money, and using that kind of thing. What actual approach will get your attention where you're like, all right, because like there are good vendors out there. I happen to think we're a good vendor because we have
they hire amazing talent, Daniel.
Yeah, we hire amazing talent. However, all of that stuff is then behind this sales wall. And of course they have sales plays and they have all these things, and somebody somewhere decided it'd be a great idea to like start sending emails about, oh, what if this thing happens? And what if the earth stops spinning and then your firewall in front of your Jira goes down, whatever. Like,
I have lots of opinions on this.
Well, good. That's why I asked the question. What actually will get you to be like, all right, you don't seem like, you're full of crap.
Well, here's one for you, just as a perspective. In the time we've been talking, I've received 27 new emails.
And they're all from Black Hat.
So email is So email in general is I live out of email in 30-minute blocks of time usually, and so and my schedule starts early and it runs late, and sometimes I have meetings starting at 6 a.m. my time, and some days I'll run until 7 p.m. And I don't mean that as some sort of badge of honor, just like the reality of
just the reality. Yeah.
That's the turf that comes with the seat. My biggest complaint about the sales cycle is in general, especially in the security tooling. And actually, I can sort of look at because I do infrastructure, so I can sort of look at the network side as sort of the antithesis of the security side, where it's the tech is boring, and you can only get so hot and bothered about SD-WAN.
Right.
And so which is a good thing. But the biggest
Must be.
thing that I get on the sales side, honestly, is just that people call me up and tell me what I need, and no one asks me what my concerns are. No one calls me up and say, hey, what risk are you worried about? And the problem with not doing that is like, I don't know, if I don't have a lawn and, I've got people banging on my door trying to sell me a lawnmower, I'm going to be like, hey, piss off. Like, I don't have a lawn. Like, look around you. There's no grass here. Why don't you ask me if I need to mow grass? Because what I really need is a good broom. And so and maybe this is just a reality of how much the salespeople are under the gun for how many contacts they make. I don't know what it is, but like the problem in security, and Doug said it way earlier on the call here, but he said the magic words: people, process, and technology. And I don't believe the order of that is random. I believe technology is the last thing. We have an another talk about the challenges of people just running off and buying boxes, half configuring them, and then wondering why shit doesn't work ever. But the reality is that like you come to me and I know the current joke is of course AI. Prior to that, it was single pane of glass, which I still hear occasionally. And the thing is that all of that sounds wonderful, but if you can't come and ask me how to articulate what I need, like the sort of you're just like screaming into the dark and hoping that I happen to be also interested in the thing you're screaming about at that moment. And it's like, and so that's the biggest one for me. And I'll be honest with you, and I guess for any of the salespeople out there, the rare person who asks me like, hey, we have this tech, but what are you worried about? Like, I still use those. I bring those salespeople from business to business. Like, I use them. Like they get my ongoing attention, just because it's such a rare experience to have somebody not just tell me. And then the other thing, and this of course has been very relevant recently, is I have an actual shit list, like shitlist.txt.
I knew it.
If you use the misfortune of others as a way to try to sell to me, I don't care if you're selling the product that will fix all of my cybersecurity processes. I just think you're an asshole and I won't talk to you. And it's and I know that's like a pretty dark line to draw there. And
no, not at all.
Jack, I know so many CISOs are doing that now. They're just, it's fed up. It's enough with that.
You gotta remember from all of us in security, like again, it's the old earthquake. It's the old InfoSec should adopt the California Earthquake Authority's motto. It's not when. It's no, wait, what is it? It's not if, it's when.
Right.
And like that's their insurance pitch. Like that's their entire marketing program. Like their marketing program is that's their pitch. And the reality is that like the security community is very, very obviously we all know each other. Like people know each other. Like it's small to begin with, but also like that's a bad situation to be in. And the reality is that InfoSec can't prevent that, and a lot of businesses don't know that. And so a lot of CISOs or directors of security, or even just directors of IT who are also responsible for security, they're sitting there under this impossible gun of don't let that happen to us, when, as we talk about, it's realistically a business decision. And so then to have some sales org come rolling along, like bandying down like the latest victim to throw into the volcano, just like leaves a really, really, really bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, I was actually pretty proud of what we did at Splunk, because it was myself and about 5 others on our team. First thing we did is grabbed everybody by the scruff of their neck in the last couple of months and say, don't you dare use SolarWinds as as like throw them under the bus as any way to sell a goddamn product. I swear to God, if I catch you doing it. And it was like everybody kind of starts like, okay. And we're like, we're not joking. Like, do not do that.
We had that same discussion internally, because it's here via Gigamon, because it's just like, yeah, it's just bad. It's bad. It's bad optics. You just look like a bottom feeder.
Yeah, there was one of my most hated ones that I saw, and I won't mention names because I honestly don't remember them, and I kind of wish I did, was a company who had, oh no, now I remember, but I'm not going to say it. It was a company who brought in a third party to do your normal, phishing campaign or whatever. Now, there are two arguments to this. However, I believe there's still a line. There are other things you could have done. These people sent out a phishing email that said, everybody, in the time of COVID, in the time of all of this upheaval about like packages from the government and things, everybody's getting a bonus. Click here for more details. Oh my God. I don't care. And listen,
That
I'm
culture
not
sucks though, because they also hunt endangered animals, so I'm not gonna.
Yeah, I have seen a lot, right? I've worked at a lot of different companies. I know the procedures for this, and I know like, okay, but like, no, there has to be some kind of ethical line that you're gonna, and that applies not only to these third parties that are doing these campaigns, but also, like you said, sales capitalizing on trauma, right? It is
Well,
one.
also internally, right? Because when things like this happen, and then going back to this whole kind of theme is, look, the one saying I hate the most is like, oh, that guy's or this girl is so good that they can sell ice to Eskimos. I bet an Eskimo doesn't need ice. So now you're selling disingenuous products to somebody that doesn't need something. And you know what? Then the rest of us look bad. And it makes my job harder when I'm actually trying to do the right thing, when everybody thinks I'm some kind of snake oil salesman trying to hawk a ware when that's not. And these people that do this in the industry are toxic. They make everything harder for everybody. And then people have a distrust of security.
The biggest issue become in my mind for it though is just in sort of like, this is a shame on us for building the internet and letting it get into this thing, but it's just like it's just the extreme lack of empathy. Like, it's easy to just otherize people. And I actually was having this conversation with some people recently that like one of the you see it in some of the marketing like Danny talked about, and you also even see it sometimes amongst the security community. But it's this interesting phenomena of that you read about SolarWinds, for this, use them as the example, and there's this tendency for people to then revert to this belief that because this is happening, it must mean that they were deficient, they were bad at security, they were negligent, all these bad words you assign. But as I was saying to the people I was talking to, I was like, I think that's a huge mistake. I think the starting ground is we should probably assume they were at least as good as us, maybe better. And then if we start thinking about this as what it really is, which is a highly sophisticated nation-state attacker working against an organization, and all organizations are going to have flaws, and they're all going to have gaps, and they're all going to have things that they haven't invested in. Like, you start thinking about that, and suddenly you gain that empathy back, because you start realizing, well, gee, if they were at least as good as us, then that means it's at least as likely that it could have happened to us. And then it becomes what it really is, which is a probabilistic event. And I use the same way of like the metaphor. The problem with cyber is it's easy to sort of, it's stuck in its own media loop now. But like the metaphor I use, I think, to explain this would be like, if you hear about a plane crashing, we don't assume that was like the jalopy airplane that like took off with a wing taped on. Right. We assume what it is, which is that it's a bad event to occur. And what we need to do now is go understand how it happened so we can learn from it. I mean, you look back as far as the 1970s, like getting on a commercial airplane was dangerous. Like, it was one of the most dangerous things you could do. They were falling out of the sky. They were having midair collisions. Like the window back in the 50s, they put square windows in them, and the windows would randomly blow out while the plane was at high altitude, because it turns out it creates a pressure crack, all this other stuff. But nowadays, like, it's not that plane crashes happen less for a whole bunch of stuff, but more importantly is we made them survivable. It is actually very likely that most crashes happen on takeoff and landing. It is actually very likely that you'll survive a plane crash. And Doug said the word a little while ago, and I think it's one that we never want to forget in this industry, which is resilience. It's not, prevention doesn't work. And like, we tried it for a long time, and I think we really wanted it to be prevention.
Yes.
It's not, right? Like, cyber resilience is, can we continue operating in a degraded state? And like, can we navigate the PR? Can we navigate the technical challenges? And it's like, we need to stop thinking about preventing our planes from crashing and think about, making it so that we can get off the plane or we can at least survive the initial impact. And we don't spend enough time thinking about that. I mean, just little, like I was looking into this, and because it was just, I was fascinated about how that evolution happened, because there's so much we can learn from cyber. Do you hear that noise? That's the annual first Wednesday of the month air raid.
Oh, hey, yeah, what happened to mine? I was supposed to get mine too today. Never did.
You guys have air raids?
Yeah, we have an air raid siren that goes off every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time here in Richmond, California. The
duck and cover.
Yes, exactly. But the just little things that like you wouldn't think of, but that can be turned into really functional controls. Like during a plane crash, the cargo bins have to be able to survive 9G of impact, because otherwise there's luggage everywhere and you can't get down the aisle.
Well, it's funny. It's like what perfect example of that is when people like, from a safety and protection standpoint, is I don't understand why I have to put my laptop and phone blah 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 away during takeoff and landing. It's like, because a laptop going 70, 80, 90, 100 miles an hour through the cabin is going to screw somebody up. So you can't just have random things floating around in the points where those most likely event. And we're not going to say it's never going to happen. We're not going to say it's going to happen, but if there's a likelihood, this is a simple mitigation step, is you to put your stupid phone and your laptop away for 15 minutes.
And herein lies and so to get back to Danny's original question of the sales cycle part, because here's the problem, right? Like, if I need to build resiliency, you need to ask me what I'm concerned about, because like if I've got a cargo plane and I don't have any passengers, then the overhead bin doesn't matter to me.
Not an issue.
And it's like, but maybe something else does, like, fire suppression, because I'm carrying, I don't know, flammable chemicals on my plane. And so the problem with all of that is that I want to build resilience, and I appreciate that you got some fancy AI stuff, and I'm sure it works great. But like, if that's not a problem I care about, then tell me, so I know tell me how to recognize if I ever have that problem, but like recognize if I don't and shuffle on, like, because the problem is it makes it really challenging then for me to spot, because in this onslaught of sales, it makes it really hard for me to figure out the people who are really selling me the thing I can actually use. And also, if it's not a crisp message, like, I'm not going to read it. Like, I read the first like 2 sentences of emails and pretty quickly decide if that is getting a reply or getting immediately deleted.
Yeah.
And so like, if you don't have that, because you're trying to convince me that like my plane needs your safety feature, and that's going to increase the survivability of the crash. So
my favorite thing about people, and listen, there are people that are actually doing some of like very interesting things with like AI and things like that. But my favorite meme is the one that's like, you guys are worried about AI. Here's what we did when we showed a picture of a dog to AI. It just says cat. So don't worry about it just yet. I also like to note that siren did not go off until Jack said cyber. Like,
that's right.
That happened, and I was like, was there a drinking game I wasn't aware of?
Cyber siren. I started talking about cyber, and then the siren went off. It's true. That's how it goes around.
So we've got just a few minutes left. There was one question that can kind of tie into all of these things, and it always goes around in my head because I hear this said both as like an excuse. I hear it said as like a problem statement. I hear it said like in a bemoaning fashion about like, unless you're and even if you are a product company, security is, oh well, we're just seen as a cost center. What can we do? What can they do, Jack? Like, yes, it's a cost center. It costs money, like an internal security team, unless you're selling bogus Girl Scout cookies, is a cost center. Like, it's not generating revenue a lot of times. How do you turn that problem statement into an opportunity to actually get better and have people care? Like, yes, you're a cost center, but you're a worthy cost center.
Yeah, I mean, so therein lies the that's always the rub.
If we figure that out today on this podcast, then we're all set for life.
Rich.
I mean, it's the magic one. Yeah.
I mean, probably the easiest way is to start investing some of our budget in like Dogecoin or something like that, and like start run crypto mining attacks against our competitors.
There we go. Full disclosure: don't do that.
Don't do that. The no. So like I think a lot of that goes back to the business alignment thing. Like the so sort of in two ways. So one is, at least at my level, like part of this is that I don't own risk for everybody, right? Like if you're a department with system challenges, you own the risk of that. We will help with the controls and stuff. So there's sort of, I think, especially like in security orgs in general, I think a lot of people sort of imagine that like all the security spend comes from the InfoSec budget, and like it's going to depend on organizations and everything, but like and maybe it does in some places, but the reality is that's sort of not how budget works. Like there's sort of there's a balloon of money at any corporation, and it's a balloon filled with sand, and if you pull it, it takes different shapes. And so if something is worthy of security and expenditure and you've done a good job aligning to the business, like they'll pull the balloon a little bit more your way to get that. And so a lot of times when initiatives don't get funded, when people feel like they did a lot of work and they didn't get the money they needed, well, it's because of either the articulation of the business need failed and people didn't agree, or the business decided not to address it. And both of those are, the first one is, remedial. You fix the first one by getting better at aligning with the business. The second one, you recognize what it is, which is that we're accepting a risk, we're transferring the risk, we're doing whatever we want to do with it, like, but that we're doing something with it. And so sometimes, we didn't go ahead with the initiative is not a failure sign, and that's not what it means. And again, it goes back to sort of my point about like making sure to understand that like how you feel about doing good security isn't necessarily that's not necessarily a reflection on the security team, and it's not a reflection because sometimes we make these decisions. I like and another CISO gave me this one, and I like using it a lot. But dear risk owner, because the one of the best things we can do is sort of remind people that security is not the first line of defense; it's the last line of defense. The business is the first line of defense, and then we're there at the backside. I variably heard this as we're not Batman, we're Robin, and so and I think that's an important thing to remember. Otherwise, it becomes really easy to sort of you start internalizing it, and it's that's not healthy. And so I think there goes a lot into that. The other thing though too is that I think on the topic of spend and budget is that a lot of people we see a lot of stuff and we start to get like, we need to fix that, we need to fix that, we need to fix that, we need to fix that. And the bill for fixing all that starts to get really big, or the amount you spend on each of those fixes starts to get really low. And so part of this is really recognizing, what are the things that you're really worried about, the metaphorical crown jewels, and electrify the fence around those things. And I use the fence the fence metaphor because like I spend a lot of time out in the mountains, and my wife and I are looking to eventually get some property out in the desert. And, some of these properties are they're cheap because you can get basically infinite land in Nevada for nothing. But you think about security of that, right? Like, am I going to spend a massive amount of money to ring an 80-acre parcel with like
right.
chain link fence with razor wire, when the reality is that the vast majority of that land is just scrub grass? It's like, no, but maybe you are going to put that around your house. And it's sort of like so a lot of times this becomes a function of when people are saying we don't have the budget, what they also are often saying is we're inefficiently spending it. And does that mean maybe some things are allowed to melt down and you sort of clean up the aftermath? Yeah. I mean, not every bit is as important as every other bit, right?
Jack, this is the very last thing. Finish this statement that I often hear from leadership and CISOs and things like that. Well, we're not a target.
Can I finish it with just sounds and laughter?
That's fine. No, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I always finish it with, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I think I would say that too.
Yeah.
We're not a target except when we are. And it's and that's the constant problem, right? Like, and then I would leave the other point that as a reminder to everybody that does security to pace themselves, because one of the smartest things I had heard another CISO say to me, although I think he meant it in a very bad way, but I took it in a very positive way.
Sure.
Which he said, trying to do doing security is like trying to climb a mountain with no top, and I think that's good to remember, because the other side of it then is that we should make sure we know that we occasionally stop, take a break, look around, take in the view, recalibrate, make sure we're still going the right way, and then start that.
I love talking to people when they say they're not a target. I'm like, that's awesome. How did you do it? Like what? Like why don't you think you're a target? And as soon as it's going to be like, we don't have PHI, we don't have credit card information, we're not that big of a company. I was like, oh wow. Well, how do you guys make money then?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you're not,
and they're like, well, we do this. Like, say it's not done with just because it's done a ton of, like law firms are classic ones of like, well, look what I was like, wow. What about the cost? Like, so you're not worried about the confidentiality? Don't you have ABA rules around the confidentiality of data, like where you have to have reasonable protections? Yeah. So like, what's your biggest customer? You as a lawyer, you must bill a couple $1 million a year. How much are you willing to lose? Lawyers hate that question, by the way. I lose, lawyer can't, and their like brain breaks down and like, I don't want to lose anything. I'm like, all right, well, you just said you're not a target, but if somebody were to get this data, you could really lose the business.
You've got a really good line. Next time someone tells you that, Doug, you can say, oh, that's great to hear. Your product really must not be worth anything.
Exactly. Right? Wow, you really suck.
Yeah, on that note, man, you guys must be awful. That's awesome. Good for you.
Good for you.
On that, we are coming up on the hour, and we could talk about this stuff literally forever. There's so much, but I wanted to thank both Doug, my compatriot here at Splunk, my brother from another mother, and one of my absolute favorite people in the entire world, Mr. Jack Ham, who is CISO and VP of something or other. Come on, who knows what he's doing? Even though he said it at the top of the show, but now I can't remember if he said it before I started recording or after I started recording. Jack, if people found you particularly charming and engaging, can they find you anywhere?
Yes, I think I'm on Twitter at I am Jack Ham, and LinkedIn, and of course, you can send me, throw letters at my house or drop things from the sky, whatever. Just don't leave surprises on my desktop.
For some reason, and I'm not sure if you guys have ever seen that movie, the one Spider-Man movie, Spider-Verse.
Oh yeah.
Have you both seen it? Well, so when the cartoon pig Spider-Man comes out, I name him Jack Ham. Like that's not even a lie. I know he has a name like Spider Pig or whatever his name is. His name to me is Jack Ham. It always has been. So thank you very much, Doug. If people wanted to follow you and figure out, because Doug, you do some podcasting too. You do some streams, right?
I do. Cybersecurityinterviews.com and on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's my social media drug of choice. I cannot keep up with the likes of you on Twitter, my friend.
Oh, good for you, because somebody's got to go to LinkedIn. And as for me, if you like this is the first of hopefully many for the Second Order Security podcast here at Splunk. And you can also follow me, twitter.com/DAKACKI. But most importantly, we do security. We do it really well. And we have a lot of very smart people and a lot of great products like Phantom. And you can figure out what those are and find out more about them on splunk.com/security. Jack, Doug, thank you so much. I love you guys to death. And thank you for being a part of my first show here at Splunk.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful.
Our pleasure. Thank you.